Revolutionary Girl Utena is a series that cannot be defined by only a few words. Much like the rose itself, the series consists of dozens of layers, petals of symbolism overlapping and swirling together into a flower that we have given a name. To pluck every single petal and dissect every aspect of the series would be a futile endeavor, since a complete and exhaustive analysis of Utena would be so incredibly dense, easily reaching and maybe even surpassing the length of a typical Quentin Reviews video. Today, I want to pluck only a few petals from this rose, examine the aspects of the series that interest me the most, not to solve Utena, but to better appreciate it. Utena is an incredibly symbolic and meditative series. It's not some sort of puzzle where once you put in the last piece, somehow everything will come together perfectly and you'll experience a brain blast like Jimmy Neutron, suddenly having solved the mystery. I think it's a disservice to the geniuses behind it to try to boil the series down into a simplified moral or single theme, when in reality there are infinitely unique ways to interpret it by design. Revolutionary Girl Utena is an anime that dares to represent the human experience, and by doing so leaves behind a myriad of unanswered questions, confusion, and unease. But isn't that just an accurate portrayal of our own psyche? Revolutionary Girl Utena, or its Japanese name Shoujo Kakume Utena, is a 39-episode TV anime created by the production group B-Papas, formed by Utena's director Kunihiko Ikuhara. Ikuhara himself is most well known for working on Toei's adaptation of Sailor Moon, being the series director for seasons 2, 3, and 4 of the anime. Like I mentioned, Ikuhara created B-Papas, which consisted of himself, Yuichiro Oguro, Shinya Hasegawa, Chiho Saito, and Yoji Enokido. Enokido is a screenwriter who worked alongside Ikuhara when creating multiple episodes of Sailor Moon. For example, Enokido and Ikuhara worked together to write and direct the very first episode of Sailor Moon Super S, one of my favorite episodes of anime. As for Chiho Saito, she was the sole female presence in the group, being first and foremost a manga artist brought on by Ikuhara for the unique and elegant artwork in her manga Magnolia Waltz, which he happened to see in a magazine. After Saito joined B-Papas, the group began a 6-month planning period where they start to give the series shape. Although Ikuhara originally intended Utena to be a mainstream shoujo anime that could compete with Sailor Moon, the script soon became much more esoteric and avant-garde, losing its broad appeal. While B-Papas worked on ironing out the details for the Revolutionary Girl Utena anime production, Saito began writing and illustrating a manga adaptation of the story at the same time, which began serialization in 1996, only a year before the anime would air. It would quickly become clear that Ikuhara and Saito initially had very different visions for the series, with Saito imagining a more by-the-book shoujo story where a prince and princess fall in love, and Ikuhara wanting to create something more experimental, something that challenges the status quo. In particular, the two couldn't agree on the idea of Anthy and Utena becoming a couple, something that Ikuhara brought to Saito during development, catching her by surprise. In a panel hosted by Anime Limited in 2020, with Japanese to English real-time translation by Bethan Jones, both Saito and Ikuhara appear to talk about the creation of Revolutionary Girl Utena, so let's hear it straight from them when it comes to their quarrel over Anthony and Utena's relationship.
Well, when Ikuhara-san suddenly approached me with this plan, this proposal, I initially objected and we argued and we didn't actually speak for 3 months because although I wasn't personally against this storyline, I thought that I was a manga artist working on shoujo manga, and I thought that the readers that we were trying to attract expected a male-female romance in their stories. And so I thought that I didn't think that they would cope with all of a sudden with a female-female romance. But when I thought about it, these stories did already exist in shoujo manga. And one of the reasons that I wanted to draw shoujo manga was because you could do anything within that world. And so I didn't have such a deep objection to it. But at the same time, I didn't expect that Ikuhara-san was going to go so all in, to go so far with this storyline. I thought it was important to move the story forward, and freedom was such a big part of it for me that I thought I wanted it to have a sense of diversity. And I think even though there are a lot of anime that deal superficially with female-female or male-male relationships, I think the sense of freedom and of diversity that Utena had is one of the reasons that it has such a big fan base even now.
Personally, I can totally understand Saito's perspective here. She didn't want to alienate her main shoujo audience by doing something so outlandish, especially in 1996. On top of that, I'm certain she wanted the series to be successful, which would be difficult to do if the heroine ended up with a woman instead of a man. On the other hand, I applaud Ikuhara for sticking to his creative voice, despite the taboo of depicting a same-sex relationship. Like he said, he wanted to explore the themes of freedom, the idea of breaking away from what's expected of you and following the truth in your heart. I think ANTHY and Utena represent those ideas perfectly. B-Papas took inspiration from a plethora of sources while creating Utena, like the artwork of Junichi Nakahara, Hermann Hesse's novel Demian, the manga series Kaze to Ki no Uta, as well as more obvious picks like Princess Knight by Osamu Tezuka and The Rose of Versailles. Many of these listed feature cross-dressing beautiful swordswomen, but most interestingly, in my opinion, B-Papas was particularly inspired by a group called the Takarazuka Revue, an all-female theater troupe that create Broadway-style productions based off of shoujo manga, films, novels, and Japanese folktales. Watching snippets of their work, it's not hard to see the inspiration that would later become Revolutionary Girl Utena.
レースはやめなさいと言ったはずよね。
結婚は受け入れます。でもレースはやめません。
許しません。アクセルを踏んで突き進む二人でならばきっとできるさ。
The dramatic flair, colorful and sharp styling, all the men appearing just as beautiful as the women actresses, because they are, wearing crisp tuxedos and sweeping the girls off their feet. They represent a fantastical version of masculinity, one that can only be emulated during performances such as this, characters on a stage. If you've ever seen anything from Utena, even just the first episode, you know that the series has a very distinct visual and musical flair. Taking inspiration from the aforementioned Takarazuka Revue and other theatrical stylings, Revolutionary Girl Utena is incredibly theatrical and dramatized. The anime utilizes various artistic flourishes that accompany each episode, most notably the rose framing that visually indicates an important character or scene. Each member of the student council is represented by a different color of rose, easily identified by being the same color as each member's brightly colored hair. The roses in the frame change color depending on the character, helping the viewer to associate the rose with the characters. So when Utena wins each duel and destroys their rose, she's also dismantling their sense of self, their misguided ideals. Recurring in each episode are also the Shadow Girls, who show up midway through the episode to perform a strange and symbolic stage play, usually representing the themes or ideas presented during the episode, but in an abstract and enigmatic way. There are many more recurring segments in Utena, for example, the fairy tale story about Utena's past, telling of the prince that saved and inspired her. This segment plays once every handful of episodes, showcasing the visual style of the shadow characters that still reveal the hair and clothing of Utena and the prince, a style used throughout the series to represent a memory or flashback, and an artistic choice that Steven Universe would lift completely, along with basically Rose and Pearl's entire aesthetic. I don't blame Rebecca Sugar though, Utena is just that good. Circling back to when I mentioned the unique music used in the series, that aspect is thanks to both Shinkichi Mitsumune, an orchestral composer who specializes in anime, and J.A. Caesar, a film and theater composer. Ikuhara specifically sought out Caesar as a fan of his experimental music, and Caesar agreed to work on Utena because of his fondness for Sailor Moon. Nearly every episode of Revolutionary Girl Utena features two of Caesar's songs, most notably Zettai Unme Moku Shiroku as the theme for Utena entering the dueling arena and transforming.
絶対運命目標しろ
On top of that, every duel is also accompanied by a unique song by Caesar, and similarly to Zettai Unmei Mokushiroku, is also sung by the Tokyo Philharmonic Chorus, with strange and allegorical lyrics usually relating to philosophy, religion, and the arcane. The larger-than-life apocalyptic feeling of the music in Utena helps to emphasize the drama between the characters, as well as the generally vague and foreboding goal of revolutionizing the world. All of the different people that make up BPAPAs and the various inspirations that they drew from are the reason why Utena is as multi-layered as it is. It's a series born from a multitude of perspectives and artistic inclinations, coming together to form something completely unique. There's no right or wrong way to interpret Revolutionary Girl Utena, just as each person who worked on the series is a distinct individual with their own agenda, life experience, and ideals. Utena is a series that revels in the melting pot of human philosophy. That's what's so special to me about this anime. It's so dense, and yet it doesn't expect the viewer to have all the answers. It's an anime to come back to and take something new away from it each time, like a pie you leave in the fridge that's always waiting for you to come back and grab another slice. So, without any further ado, let's discuss some of my personal takeaways from this series, not as an entire retrospective, but just a few notes that I'd like to share with you. This video will leave plenty of room for more Utena analysis in the future, so if you enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe. It would mean the world. The visuals of Utena play a huge part in understanding the overall narrative. There's a reason Ikuhara scouted Saito Chiho. Her illustrations have a very romantic quality to them, perfect for shoujo manga, and perfect for a story that wants to understand and critique the tropes in those types of manga. Paired with Saito's elegant and beautiful character designs, the show, as mentioned before, utilizes very theatrical staging. Utena often reuses imagery, or sets in a way, communicating to the viewer that we are watching something very performative, staged. Each character plays the role they're meant to play while unknowingly being directed by the hands of the end of the world, who is waiting and observing in the shadows. Red curtains show up a lot in the series, representing a stage. For example, in the recurring student council segment, we see red curtains that have been pulled apart, revealing the rose window and door that leads outside where the student council conducts their meetings. Also, the eye catch used to split the episode into two parts utilizes red cloth behind the anime's logo, reminiscent of red stage curtains. Along with curtains, spotlights are also used quite often in Utena in order to convey importance. For example, when Utena embodies the power of Dios, she has a spotlight put on her. All of the theatrical imagery within Utena communicates the story's themes of identity, social roles, and illusion. Besides how the anime uses the idea of theatrical production to represent its themes, Revolutionary Girl Utena also tends to invoke the aesthetics of fairy tale books, which sometimes go hand in hand with plays, since both mediums often utilize rigid roles and reused tropes for their characters. The fairy tale-esque imagery, such as the upside-down castle, the school uniforms being styled after princess dresses and princely attire, engagement rings, roses, the use of rapier swords while dueling for a princess's honor, etc., etc., all bring to mind an idealistic reality where everyone's problems are black and white, where a simple duel can allow the prince to save the princess and begin their happily ever after, despite the fact that the prince in question knows nothing of the horrors bubbling just underneath the surface where she can't see. The characters in Utena all live in a fantasy full of delusion, refusing to grow out of their romanticized views of the world and accept a harsher reality. Utena Tenjo is a character purposely written to be very dense and very naive. Nanami, of all people, even calls her out on this behavior, particularly in episode 32, when Nanami stays the night with Utena, ANTHY, and Akio.
やっぱり鈍いのね。どうりであんなおぞましい兄弟と一緒に暮らせるわけだわ。
Instead of questioning why ANTHY disappears sometimes to be with Akio in the wee hours of the night, she instead romanticizes it as being some incredible sibling bond. Utena's righteous nature is equally rivaled by her failure to ask questions, get to the bottom of things. She takes everything at face value, and if it's someone she deems as good, like Akio, will always assume the best in them. Similarly, Utena is characterized as wanting to embody a prince. The pitch for her character is a tough, beautiful girl who prefers to wear boys' clothing and wants to become the prince she longs for from her past. The idea of a prince is purposely vague. It's a social role which places her as the protector of princesses, a duty to fight bad guys and act in an overall noble way, but every single one of the princely characters we see in Utena fail to live up to those expectations. Many of them use the princely persona to control and take advantage of women, manipulate Utena, and destroy everything around them, yet are still considered princes in the hierarchy of the school. The idea of princes and princesses are concepts that Revolutionary Girl Utena wants to deconstruct, and the best way to do that is through a character like Utena, who has looked up to the idea of a prince her entire life. However, despite this goal, she is ultimately primed to be groomed by Akio due to her inherent naivety about the world. Utena never even tries to criticize the obvious power imbalance between princes and princesses. Yes, she is against ANTHY being seen as an object, but ANTHY's case is just an extreme version of the sick system Utena is already playing into, something Utena wants to ultimately be a part of in her quest to become a prince herself. Utena's unwillingness to think about the world in a way different from her fairy tale framework limits her ability to actually revolutionize the world. Especially when it comes to ANTHY, Utena takes the role of protector over her despite never being asked to, positioning herself as ANTHY's knight. Her rose-colored view of ANTHY as a helpless princess makes it easy for ANTHY to manipulate Utena just as Akio does, using Utena's goodwill against her. Just as a side note, I don't intend to dive super deep into ANTHY's psychology in this video, but rest assured I think she's an excellent character. Utena's acts of heroism and kindness, while on one hand showing Utena's kind soul and good nature, can also be seen as hollow attempts to emulate a fairy tale-like fantasy of a prince. Her protection of ANTHY is surface level, putting a bandage over a gaping wound. Utena stays completely blind to ANTHY's real plight throughout the entire series, instead opting to live in her delusions of princely altruism. And what we can assume is the true flashback from Utena's meeting with her prince as a child, Dios shows her ANTHY's eternal suffering, being told only a prince can save her. Utena's impressionable mind takes this as a fact, an immovable truth. Only a prince can save this girl, so I must become a prince. From that day forward, Utena's worldview had been set in stone. In a world of only princes and princesses, she had to become the former. However, over the years, like childhood memories tend to do, this recollection of events becomes warped. Instead of becoming a prince in order to save ANTHY, Utena wanted to become a prince because she was so enthralled by the one who saved her. After all, A Tale of a Young Princess and a Handsome Prince is a much more romantic story than that of a small girl who wishes to save another girl. The characters in Utena all cling to memories that they believe keep them grounded, when in reality, hopelessly obsessing over these memories is keeping them all from truly growing up. Each character has their own sort of fairy tale they tell themselves. While fairy tale books are great for helping children understand simple concepts and morals, they can only represent an extremely simple worldview that doesn't leave room for ambiguity. Eventually, you have to move on from the fairy tale picture books, the fantasies of princes, princesses, white horses, and miracles behind. If you don't, you'll be unable to truly come to terms with the complexities of real life. Each character in Utena must make a choice, cling to their childhood, or face the unknown that is adulthood. The idea of adulthood is brought up a lot in the series, particularly by Akio, who seems to define being an adult by his ability to control and manipulate the people around him, believing that it's ultimately for their own good. There's something about Otori Academy that keeps people in a limbo, and that's not just a symbolic interpretation, it's outright stated in the Black Rose Saga. Being within the walls of Otori means you will never mature, you'll stay young forever and forever a slave to your romantic memories, endlessly chasing a past that never even really existed in the first place. Being so attached to something that you cannot have keeps the students at Otori weak and easy to control, which Akio takes advantage of with ease. I sort of see Otori Academy as the embodiment of seishun. a Japanese term meaning the springtime of youth, typically used to reminisce about your high school days, your first love, adventures with friends, etc., before having to join the workforce or go to college. The idea of seishun isn't inherently toxic, but being obsessed with and never letting go a place you cannot return to is very harmful to your soul and can keep you from moving past what you believe was your golden era. I believe Utena wants to criticize the romanticization of seishun, as it can actively harm your future relationships and your ability to seize new opportunities, unable to grow into an even better version of yourself. True freedom, according to revolutionary girl Utena, is no longer allowing your past to control you. Freedom is allowing yourself to bloom into something new by leaving behind those old and romantic memories, despite how comforting they once were. Akio is the ultimate example of an eternal child refusing to leave his cocoon. Instead, he would rather delude himself into thinking he has it all figured out, when in reality, he's more lost than any other character in the series. Akio is truly a slave to his own fantasies, someone convinced that his prince side has been taken from him, despite the idea of a prince being a made-up construct in the first place. He clings to his immature view of the world, believing solely in the rigid structure of feminine princesses, masculine princes, and his twisted relationship with ANTHY, viewing her suffering as something that can't be helped. Utena ends up being the perfect test for his philosophy. If he can make her into his loyal princess despite her strong will and lofty goals of becoming a prince, he'll have proven that it's the correct way to view the world, and he'll finally be able to achieve his happily ever after, something that was stolen from him in his past. Something I admire about revolutionary girl Utena is its ability to critique the ways a patriarchal structure harms both women and men. Dios destroyed himself trying to be the purest embodiment of a noble prince, the savior of literally every single girl on earth. His dedication to being a true prince left him broken and unappreciated, with everyone demanding more and more until he had nothing left to give. Men are often expected to be the sole providers, aren't allowed to show emotion, and need to stick to certain hobbies lest they get mocked. I'm not trying to say that the pressure from a patriarchal society is the same on men and women. As we see with ANTHY, the consequences of misogyny far outweigh the consequences of misandry. However, the point is that the systems in revolutionary girl Utena aren't necessarily a utopia for men and a dystopia for women. There's a lot of nuance at play when it comes to the ways in which the students at Otori experience the roles of being a prince or a princess, but the point of all of it is that human beings aren't really meant to be shoved into such rigid roles. The final scene in Revolutionary Girl Utena shows ANTHY walking away from her old life, no longer a passive object, a princess soaked in tragedy. Utena has seemingly been forgotten, and many of the characters appear to have resumed their daily lives as normal. Utena's power to revolutionize the world seemed to have failed. The world seems just as mundane as it did before. However, I interpret Utena's sacrifice for ANTHY to have massively impacted the world. Utena was able to help one person walk away from their abuse. She saved one person from suffering for eternity. ANTHY's decision to leave Akio behind is a revolution in and of itself. A revolution doesn't need to change everything all at once. That idea alone is as wild as the miracles and fairy tales that the anime critiques. Saving a single person, helping someone make the choices that will lead to their happiness, that's a revolution anyone can do. Ending on ANTHY walking away from the school, a school that represents a limbo of delusions and childlike fantasy, is extremely cathartic. For the first time, ANTHY gets to choose her own path in life, not one influenced by her love for her brother or her supposed role as a princess. I feel strange even writing this conclusion because, like I stated at the start of this video, I barely scratched the surface when analyzing the series. What I talked about today are the aspects of the series that called out to me the most, but needless to say, I could probably make 10 more videos on Utena and still not cover everything in the show. That wasn't the point of this, though. The point of this essay was to cover my general thoughts in the series, as well as do a bit of research into Utena's creation and inspirations. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my loose notes on one of the best anime of all time, and make sure to be loud if you want more Utena content in the future. I don't have any plans at the moment, but I love the series a lot, so I certainly wouldn't be against covering it again if this video does well. Like, subscribe for more, ring that flippin' bell, and hype the video if you're on mobile. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. Special thanks to Benny Bao, Alicia Faber, Cat on a Segway, Christian Lomax, Taz, George Sibley, Emperor RK, Meat Wizard, Ninja Dentist, Amy Dick, Constance, Cheebs, Matt Brandel, Joan, Jarrett Cartel, Amber Rain, Russell Spalding, Lily, Prince Isolation, Thiel Wren, Kesplat, and Zenonia.